list of professional officers and non-commissioned officers assigned to the Army unless otherwise stipulated by this law. And there is no such otherwise stipulated. So, VJ officers serving outside the Army have the same rights and duties as VJ officers serving in a VJ duty or post. Well, what happens if a VJ officer serving outside the Army commits a disciplinary infraction or offence? For that, Your Honours, we go to Article 159. It's page 39. Thank you, Mr. Registrar. You're way ahead of me. A service member who violates military discipline in the performance of his service or in connection with the performance of his service shall be held responsible for disciplinary infractions or disciplinary offences. There is no distinction drawn in this provision between an officer serving in the VJ, a VJ officer serving in the VJ, or a VJ officer serving outside the VJ. Under Article 8, service in the VJ includes both. So a service member under Article 9, under Article 159, is a service member as defined by Article 8, which includes VJ officers serving in VJ posts and VJ officers serving outside the VJ. All right, so once a VJ officer serving outside the VJ commits an offence for which he is liable under VJ law, who has the responsibility of disciplining? Is it the Ministry of Defence or is it somebody else? And for that, Your Honours, we go to Article 181. Which states, the following individuals are authorised to bring the perpetrator of a disciplinary offence before a military disciplinary court in the Federal Ministry of Defence. So that's limited to the Federal Ministry of Defence. The Federal Minister of Defence and commanding officers of the units directly subordinated to him. The only other alternative in the Army, that is the VJ, Army Commander, or senior officer holding an equal or higher position. So, Your Honours, there is no room, there is simply no room to interpret the law on the VJ as saying, as my learned friend does, that somehow, if you are assigned to a post outside of the VJ, that there is no longer authority over that person, disciplinary responsibility over that person, or that you are outside the VJ chain of command. Unless Your Honours have any questions for me, those are my submissions.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Lukic, any rejoinder? Mr. Lukic, my apologies. Mr. Harmon, I apologize to you too.
No problem, Your Honor. I accept them. Thank you. Your Honor, first of all, let me comment on Mr. Lukic's correct assertion that Prosecution Exhibit 2710 is quoted out of context in paragraph 785 of our brief. I do accept that. I apologize for that. I also note, Your Honor, that the Prosecution Exhibit 2710 is quoted in the relevant portions of it are quoted in paragraph 78, and they're quoted in the proper context in that. So now let me also address a point that Mr. Lukic made this morning, and that is, as you recall, at the beginning of my opening remarks, I informed the trial chamber that we would not proceed further under Article 7.3, failure to prevent, in respect of the counts in Zagreb. The defense this morning has submitted that this action by the prosecutor undercuts our assertion that Perišić had effective control over General Čeliketic and others. The prosecution's proper exercise of discretion and discharge of his responsibilities does no such thing. And I would ask you, when you to consider, first of all, the facts relating to the events in Zagreb, and I need to go into private session for just a minute, Your Honor.
May the Chairman please move into private session.
Open session.
Thank you so much, Mr. Registrar. Yes, Mr. Harmon.
Your Honor, I would like to address defense submissions that were made at pages 14,807 and 14,808. Those submissions that the defense made were as follows: that General Perišić attempted to persuade members of the SDC that people who came from Bosnia and from Croatia who did not want to fight for their homeland had no place in the VJ. Mr. Lukic says that General Perišić could not persuade members of the SDC to accept such a firm position. And when General Perisić's proposal was rejected by the SDC, the defense asserted the following: General Perišić lost his position of authority, which would enable him to order something to anyone to do anything. Next, he lost his power to issue an order from his position of superior to send anyone to the VRS. And lastly, his order, therefore, did not have a binding nature, a binding character. Now, I'd like to explore the facts. Your Honors have received Prosecution Exhibit 709, which is the transcript of the 14th session of the SDC. And in the English version of that, Your Honor, I'm referring to pages 32 to 36 of that. The context is this: General Perišić had submitted to the SDC a document in which he proposed to the SDC that people who did not want to serve in Croatia or in Bosnia should be expelled from the Army if they refused. Now, we submit, Your Honor, and in fact, Mr. Bulatovic, who was a member of the SDC, agreed with General Perišić. He did, in fact, persuade the SDC of the position he was advocating. They just didn't want the sanctions to be imposed on people who refused to go to the other armies to be so direct. They wanted to indirectly sanction people for their refusals. As Mr. Bulatovich said in this text, he says that it was in the vital interest of the state not to elevate this. He said, he discussed the document that General Perišić had submitted to the SDC, and he said, if this document were to fall in anybody's hands, it would keep us under sanctions for 10 years. Mr. Bulatovich said, as a member of the SDC, I am in favor of applying certain restrictive measures to those who fail to respond to a call-up to defend their people, but not in such a direct manner. General Perišić responded on page 35 of the transcript that he had found a way to solve the problem. I will read General Perisić's solution to the problem of what to do with people who refused orders to go to the VRS or the SVK. And this is at page 35. I have already issued an internal order that they're all supposed to go there. Whoever doesn't want to go has to find a mode. We, too, have found the appropriate criteria. For instance, if someone doesn't want to go and has over 30 years of pensionable employment, we can give him early retirement so that we're not accepting this. We'll tell him that he is not performing his duties in a satisfactory manner and other things, but we won't write down that he did not want to go there. So we won't give them any kind of legal stronghold. However, we can rework this order. This is the document, I say parenthetically. Now, this is the document that he had presented to the SDC for its consideration. However, we can rework this order in all its other segments and submit it to the President and just leave out the part related to their having to go. We'll find another way of getting rid of them. Now, both the SDC, as I say, and General Perišić agreed that people who didn't want to go should be out of the Army. It was just the way in which that problem would be resolved. Now, Your Honor, contrary to the defense assertion, General Perišić did not lose his position of authority as a superior to send someone to the VRS or to the SVK. That's simply not correct. He did send people to the VRS and the SVK. That is in our brief. I made some submissions on that in my earlier remarks where there are orders to transfer. We saw an order to transfer people from the various personnel centers back and forth. But he in fact did, and he persisted in doing that throughout the war to the end of the war. So he did not lose his authority. Next, contrary to the defense position that his orders did not have a binding effect, a binding character, it's our submission, first off, that the law on the Army, P197, Article 37, requires a member of the service to follow an order. If you don't follow an order, Your Honor, it's a disciplinary offense. And according to Mr. Starchevich, the subordinate who received an order was required to obey it. You'll find Mr. Starchevich's testimony at page 5463, lines, well, 5463, Your Honor. Now, when I say the failure to follow an order was a disciplinary offense, I refer, Your Honors, to P197, Article 160, Subpart 1. It's our submission, contrary to the defense submission, that none of General Perisić's legal authority was vitiated by the SDC's decision. Let me turn, Your Honor, to another aspect of Mr. Lukic's submissions. We had a discussion yesterday and today about context, and a large amount of time was the discussion relating to the Fry's desire to have peace at some point in time. And that point in time was when the contact group had made a proposal, and at that point in time we can see a political divergence between the political leaders of the RS and the political leadership of the Fry. When the RS leaders rejected the contact group plan, there was a shift in the attitude of the Fry political leadership. Milosevic was quite upset. The Fry was under sanctions. He, according to the text we've seen, he wanted the RS leaders to accept the peace plan. Now, as a result of the rejection of the peace plan, the Fry introduced sanctions against the RS. Those sanctions were introduced on the 4th of August, 1994. I have submitted in evidence Prosecution Exhibit 222, Your Honor, and let me tell you what 222 is. It is a report. It is an article from the newspaper reporting on the Drina River border being closed, and it reports on the sanctions. And what it says is, and I'll read this, the Republika Srpska leadership, by rejecting peace, has committed the worst act against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, the Serbian and Montenegrin people, and all other citizens living in these territories. Therefore, the federal government has decided to cut political and economic ties with the Republika Srpska, ban Republika Srpska top officials, brackets, assembly, presidency, government, close brackets, from Fry territory. The Fry border is closed for all shipments into Republika Srpska, except food, clothes, and medicine. Now, Your Honor, this political set of factors that have been described by Mr. Lukic and which resulted in the sanction are quite interesting, but have little bearing on General Perisic's responsibility under Article 7.1 for aiding and abetting by providing men and materiel to the forces in the VRS. I say that, Your Honor, because General Perisic's assistance never did change in respect of the assistance he rendered to the VRS. The Fry border was closed. The assistance continued. We briefed that point in our final brief. You can find that at paragraphs 283 to 286. The Fry continued to support the VRS with a brief exception That exception being that they stopped the payment of salaries for a period of 5 months to the VRS, while at the same time they continued to provide some support to the families of those VRS personnel who were serving or those VJ personnel who were serving in the Republic of Srpska. At the same time, Your Honor, when General Perišić, when the Fry salaries had been cut off, P851 shows that General Perišić sent General Mladić 500,000 dinars to assist in the payment of salaries. Now, we also had, Your Honor, a reference today to a meeting that took place in August of 1995. That meeting was a meeting where a decision was to be taken as to who would represent the Serb interest at Dayton. Milosevic was there, General Perišić was there, General Mladić was there, political leaders from the RS were there. And so was a Serb Orthodox bishop by the name of Bishop Erinje. And at some point in the text of those meetings, which you have as Prosecution Exhibit 230, and at page 11, Bishop Erinje advocated to President Milosevic the lifting of the Drina River blockade. And this is in August of 1995. President Milosevic responded to the bishop. He said the blockade was merely a formality in that aid flows daily. Now, Your Honor, I also refer Your Honors to the testimony of a witness. The transcript reference is 3,522 to 3,525, a discussion about the assistance to the RS and to the VRS. Not only was logistical supplies continued to be directed toward the VRS by General Perišić, but he also continued to send personnel to the VRS. And in that respect, Your Honor, I refer Your Honors to two documents that we have presented. One is Prosecution Exhibit 2519. It's referred to in our, it refers to an individual by the name of Yankovic. He's discussed in our brief at paragraphs 546 and 547. Let me tell you about P2519. This is a letter that was written by General Mladić to the VJ General Staff and to Perišić, requesting specifically that Yankovic be sent to the VRS. Specific request for Yankovic. Yankovic at the time was serving in the VJ General Staff, 2nd Administration. And this request was made months before the events in Srebrenica, and you will recall Mr. Yankovic. Mr. Yankovic, if you recall the meetings at the Hotel Fontana that are in evidence, the meetings, there were 3. In those meetings, Mr. Yankovic is present. Specifically, you will recall the meeting on the night of the 11th of July, 1995, when General Mladić is sitting talking to a Muslim representative and saying to that Muslim representative, the fate of your people depends on, your decision. It's a very ominous and chilling and threatening conversation with General Mladic and this Muslim representative. Mr. Yankovic was seated next to General Mladic at that time, taking notes and the like. Now, you'll see also, Your Honor, another document, P2518.
Let me just find out, how long are you going to be on this point?
5 minutes, Your Honor.
5 minutes?
Yes.
We are 5 minutes, almost, 3 minutes beyond the break time.
I will conclude my remarks. Well, I'll continue, Your Honor.
Okay.
If you'd like, I'm at your disposal, Your Honor.
I have no way of knowing how much longer you're going to be.
Okay. Well,
Finish off.
I'll be glad to, Your Honor. The next document, Your Honor, is 2518. It deals with an individual by the name of Kosaric. Colonel Kosaric was also a member of the Special Unit Corps, which was subordinated to General Perišić. There was a request for Mr. Kosaric by General Milovanovic, specifically naming Kosaric to come to the VRS. That was dated the 23rd of May, 1995. About a month before the events, a little bit, 5 weeks before the events in Srebrenica. And Mr. Kosaric is also identified in our trial brief, as I say, paragraphs 549 to 553. You may recall that Mr. Kosaric, at the conclusion of the meeting on the morning of the 12th of July in the Hotel Fontana, informed various people that the inhabitants of Srebrenica were going to be separated, the men were going to be separated, and they were going to be executed. Now, I say...
Did he tell them then that they were going to be executed?
Yes, he said they were going to be killed. It's in our brief, Your Honor. I can't tell you the specific paragraph, but somewhere between paragraph 549 and 553, you should find that reference. In any event, Your Honor, I think the context that we've heard, Your Honor, from the defense about Mr. Milosevic wanting peace, asserting peace, has little bearing on the 7-1 case that we have against General Perišić. It's our submission, Your Honor, that General Perišić continued to assess the VRS, supplying both military materiel and personnel, notwithstanding the political differences between Milosevic and Karadzic and Krajisnik and the like. That, Your Honor, concludes my remarks. I have nothing further to submit, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, we'll then take a break and come back at 4:30.
All rise. Voulez vous lever?